Hello, and welcome to our Somerford Associates podcast. We're talking to Dominique Top from HashiCorp today to delve into why you might go for the enterprise versions of the HashiCorp products and what advantages you get above the open source offerings. At Somerford, we have an edge as a partner of HashiCorp with our other solutions integrations, so we'll explore that a bit too. What the HashiCorp suite of enterprise is, the differences between OS to enterprise, use cases for Terraform and Vault, and also about those integrations. But if you want to explore more, feel free to get in touch afterwards. Be happy to chat with you. So let's get going. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Dominique. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just tell us a bit about your background so people who are listening understand, what your role is and who you work for? And
yeah, of course. Well, my name is Dominique Top. I am a solutions engineer at HashiCorp. I've been here for, since May 2020. So I joined during the Great Calamity. So I went from going to sell Apple computers to being an IT recruiter in the DevOps space to being a community manager and a DevOps advocate to being a solutions engineer at HashiCorp. So that's an interesting journey, and I've been wanting to work for HashiCorp for quite a long time now, and I'm here.
They do rock. But I'm really pleased to talk to you about HashiCorp Vault because what we're exploring, it really helps that you've come not from engineering into discussing it, but from the other way around, so that you'll have more of a view of how why it's useful from a much more people and a process point of view, which I think is something that's quite good to delve into.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
because we were hoping to chat more around about the enterprise versions of the HashiStack and technically why that's necessary, or even better, because there is a really strong, lovely base of open source community supporting all the products, isn't there? And that development into the enterprise products is somewhere where quite a lot of our clients sit, and they wonder why they need to leap up into enterprise.
Well, and then this has been true for most of my DevOps career, I guess. Like ultimately, it's the most important to figure out what it is that a customer is trying to solve, and that's I think where we come in, or I come in, or you come in, like trying to figure out like, okay, well, what are you doing now? Where do you want to go? Like, for most of it, it's like our suite of products is based around something that we call the cloud operating model, which is kind of I can talk about it for hours, but the basis is basically everybody's going to go multi-cloud at some point. But how do you do that? What's the process of you getting to that? And yeah, so basically, if you have loads of different types of cloud products and cloud vendors, then there's different ways of doing different things. And for open source, or all of our open source products, they solve a technical problem. So anyone could start with the open source versions of our software, and it will obviously solve whatever they need. But then the enterprise products generally solve a more operational, complex problem. So how are we going to make sure that every business unit is able to get the benefits from this layer of abstraction between different cloud vendors or different services and your teams? So on one hand, it's like it's useful that everybody can just like learn one different aspect and one different workflow. Whereas on the other side, it's like, okay, well, I can use this with AWS, or I can use this with Azure, or use this with GCP, or I can use it with Kubernetes, or there's loads of different things that you can plug it into. So it's does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So, no, you don't. So basically, you're saying that HashiCorp sits in this sort of layer to help the people who are working in organizations to plug into all those multiple cloud vendors that we all have. We get really complex architectures, basically. But there's this layer in the middle called the cloud operating model, where you can use HashiCorp to improve processes.
Yeah. So basically, what like in the before times, you have your traditional data center, which is pretty much like a static, like doesn't really move much. And especially now, everybody wants to do something in the cloud.
Yeah.
Whereas with some enterprises or some bigger companies, they're like, well, we're in the financial industry, we don't need this. We're always going to have something on prem, which is something that we count on. Like they'll always have some. You have your systems of record somewhere in your own data centers, but you also have your systems of engagement that live somewhere on the cloud. And there's so many different services that do the same things but at different vendors. And even if you have something on cloud vendor number one, there is something in cloud vendor number two that is doing exactly the same things. And if you want to leverage all of that at the same time, you don't want to upskill your people, or you don't want to have multiple people learn every single intricacies of all the different cloud vendors. So that's kind of like where we come in. So you've got, if you start like at the bottom layer, you start with Terraform,
Hmm.
which is which you can use for obviously your provisioning your infrastructure. So it's infrastructure as code. So that's generally what we see that people start using first. It's if I might say so myself, I'm a bit biased, but the de facto standard for infrastructure provisioning. And obviously, as I said, like you can use the proprietary stuff, but ultimately, if you have multiple things in multiple places, then Terraform is kind of the way forward. Then you've got Vault, which is our dynamic secrets management solution, that leverages dynamic credentials, rotation of API certificates and
Yeah.
everything. There's like lots of
Doing all those processes automatically for you that you don't need, that you need to keep on top of.
yeah. Then you've got Console, which is a service mesh and service discovery platform basically, and Nomad, which is kind of our scheduler. So one of the things I always say about Nomad that I like is that it basically schedules any workload, so not just containerized stuff, but also anything that's not in containers, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So that's we have more products obviously, but it's those are all of our open source. These the ones that I mentioned are part of the cloud operating model.
Yeah, and those are the ones that also have enterprise sort of offerings as well, that you might start, if you're an individual in a department, you might start with the open source solution, but as soon as you start to need to coordinate it across the whole enterprise, you might be looking to do an enterprise version of them. Is that
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have like your singular practitioner in some engineering team, it goes like, oh yeah, well Terraform is quite useful to like provision infrastructure. You have like your state file, which is like you declare whatever you want, click a button, or just like you run the command Terraform apply, and then your infrastructure is provisioned exactly the way you want to. It's repeatable and everything. But as soon as you want to have multiple teams working from the same accounts or from the same resources, basically, it's getting more complex, and you want to make sure that it's kind of managed. You can put guardrails in place, and you don't want all the people doing the same thing. So, like to make that a bit easier to collaborate, it's generally like we see that people move into more enterprise solution in that regard.
Yeah. So is it only on a maturity model that you'd want to move to enterprise stuff, or?
Well, it depends. Like ultimately, there's as I said in the beginning, it's kind of the only thing that's dependent on is what the company needs to achieve, what they want to do. If they run into issues where they don't want to, um, have to build the whole solution themselves, because obviously, ultimately, the open source it will solve a problem, but like the more you want to expand and the more you want to focus on innovation, like it can be easier to not have to build.
Someone could do that for you. Yeah.
Yeah, like and it's not just that. Like most of our enterprise customers also have like the full force of enterprise support, basically.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. And that's where Somerford fit in as well, because you've started going into a partner model. And with our other partners as well, we offer support as well. So there's just like an extra handheld, an extra sort of layer of expertise that can support you when you're doing. Sometimes you're doing kind of quite complex things quite early. Have you got any examples of case studies of anyone who's recently gone to Vault Enterprise or Terraform Enterprise?
Who did I work with? Yeah, there's one big company that I'm working with right now. Is like they're like in the financial space, and they're looking to go into Vault for more the advanced data protection. So there's a module that we that you can pay for in Vault Enterprise, which allows you to have transform and a bunch of other things. Or basically, you can like everything's encrypted everywhere. It's like encryption as a service on in transit and at rest.
So for
So
all of their data transfers in transit and at rest, it can all be encrypted.
yes, so it's kind of advanced data protection is so let's say there's something like if you want to save in your database, if you want to save all these kinds of like credit card numbers or something like that, you some databases don't accept anything other than like 9 numbers. So there's this I forget the name. Basically it's like format preserving encryption. Thank you very much. Sometimes I struggle with English.
That's okay. I can only speak English and a little bit of Welsh, which doesn't help. I do say so.
Yeah. No, anyway, so format preserving encryption is quite useful because that means that it will still like be encrypted, but for the database that doesn't, it will still be 9 numbers, but you can encrypt and decrypt it with Vault if you like.
Oh, okay. That's a really good use case. Why would people mainly go from OS to enterprise for Terraform?
So basically, but as I mentioned before, like normally it would obviously like open source, any of our open source stuff like solves a technical problem, but as soon as you want to scale, like you want to, if you have your self-service infrastructure with Terraform, like one of the biggest things that I see that's being used is wanting to be able to centrally manage who's using what modules and who's using, who's able to provision what resources. So where with larger enterprises, if they're using Terraform Enterprise, you'll have like a central hub of where everything is managed.
And how about for Vault? Because you've done that example there where there's the encryption at rest or whatever it was
Yeah,
called.
format preserving encryption, which is part
Thank
of the
you.
advanced data protection module.
There must be other things. So the disaster recovery, I've heard some clients pretty keen on. What's that about?
So Vault Disaster Recovery it's quite useful. So basically, what you don't want is if Vault's obviously like secure by design. So if you have all of your credentials and all of your like certificates and API keys and all that kind of stuff in Vault, and Vault dynamically rotates everything. What you don't want is when you, I don't know, lose your KMS key or lose access to one vault, that you lose access to everything.
No, you don't want that. No, that sounds bad.
So what Vault Disaster Recovery does is basically provides you with with a level of yeah resilience where you very easily can fail over to a different cluster in a different region or you know yeah. And I built a demo for this in Instruct. I can probably show if there's any interest, please drop me a message and I can show you this.
Yeah, do so. Yeah.
But it's quite useful. Like sometimes people think about disaster recovery as something like, oh, we'll think about that later, or yeah, we've got backups, and then they've never really tested it. I think that's also one of the foundations of like chaos engineering. But like, especially when it comes to secrets management, you don't want to play around with that. You want to make sure that your team knows exactly what to do when and how. We have in our on our website, on our documentation page, we have a set of best practices and like reference architectures, and we basically recommend to have a key rotation ceremony. Like, okay, so like in the morning, you start with your with an operation key which you can use to perform a failover operation, or in case of the worst. You
Yeah.
don't want that to happen, but you also don't not want to have it if you if something goes wrong. If that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. How does that work for that transition going into enterprise?
Especially if you want to go from Vault to Vault Enterprise, you basically stop Vault, put the new license in, and start Vault, and you're done. So nothing really changes.
Okay.
It's just you get more access to other things.
Yeah, and the centralized access that the
Yeah,
management will want and across you could
yeah.
copy across basically. Okay.
Yeah, you got your audit logging, you got access to Sentinel, which is our policy as code framework, which is all included in most of our enterprise products, which is useful. So you can make sure that you grant access and permissions to whoever is supposed to have the right permissions and access.
Yeah, yeah. And so you can almost knowledge share if you've got a best practice sort of policy in one area that can easily be spread across to other areas as well.
Inside Vault, yes, definitely. So,
Yeah.
in when it comes to namespaces, if you have like a mini vault, like for this business unit, and you have a mini vault to the other business unit, you can share policies between them. So you can say like, um, if you're part of this team, you have access to these things, but if you have access to this thing, doesn't necessarily mean you've got access to this thing. And you can set up, it literally goes as broad as you want. And Sentinel policy for, let's say, Terraform can also be as weird as, like, if you order a pizza via Terraform Cloud via insert pizza provider here, you can have a Sentinel policy that blocks you from ordering pineapple pizzas. um,
That's so clever.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really funny. Like, one of our colleagues, Roger, he's like our in-house Sentinel guru, and he's basically made a swath of like lots of example policies. So I can probably share a link if you want, but it's basically, you don't have to write them all yourself. There's a lot of them that the general ones are already written for you. You only have to like change it to whatever is relevant in your environment. But it's that makes sure that you can put your guardrails in place, so you know that people have the right access to the right things and everything's governed and
Yeah.
compliance and all that kind of stuff.
That's the beauty of working with a company like HashiCorp, which has got the kind of the community ethos first and then enterprise. There's just great documentation and great sharing of these policies and best practices. We found it because we started being a partner last year, about when you joined HashiCorp, actually. And so my technical guys who are getting into how to install it and how to do best for really large clients have just found it quite joyful, actually, to knowledge share with the company. It's quite fun. Because
Yeah.
it's there, there's access, and there's that improvement kind of idea. So it's good fun.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I really like HashiCorp. Even before I joined, there's such a vibrant community, and people are so willing to make the products better. And community is really important. Like, one of the things that that Mitchell and Armand are very high on it. Like, okay, well, if somebody in the community is saying, if you have any feedback, we want to hear about this, because that means that we can, you know
Improve.
build on improve on things. And I think that's one of, I really like that. For instance, Waypoint and Boundary, like, and let's not go into it too much, but those are two new open source products that people are like really excited about. And but yeah, it's the community is really important to us.
Hmm.
So
So I think we covered why you go into why you would want Vault rather than a native tool that you would have in your AWS Secrets Manager, but that's pretty much everyone is in multi-cloud, isn't it? Is that essentially the
yeah.
reason? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as I said earlier, like, the cloud operating model is, and everybody, but that's kind of like the raison d'être for why all of our products are the way they are. Like, we believe that every company is going to be multi-cloud in some sort of shape or form. And like, if you have vendor A for one thing, and then if you acquire the company, or you like merge with somebody else, or that this somebody else comes with a better deal or whatever, and everything is stuck in one thing, like, that's not portable, then you have to, like, okay, well, take it out and put it back in again, and like making sure that that you have the same functionalities as you had in the other proprietary service. But yeah, if you use something like Vault, like HashiCorp Vault, it's easier to, you'll still have the same. You have one workflow. The only thing that you need to do is making sure that it connects to the appropriate secrets engine, and then
And
yeah,
then you're done.
then you're
Yeah.
golden.
So is this what you mean when you talk about integrations then, your different plugins and providers that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Do
pretty
you
much.
Is it basically technology agnostic, or does it have to already
100%.
have 100%? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah, like the agnostic side of things, allows us to be like the layer of abstraction between the company and whatever is out there, whatever you want to plug it with.
Mhm.
Yeah, so with Terraform, for instance, there's a whole provider there's a provider program. You can, if it's not already there, you can build it yourself. Most of the main vendors are collaborating with HashiCorp to work on the providers like Microsoft and like Amazon and GitHub and who else? Bunch of like you
The
know,
usuals, the usual
yeah,
suspects.
usual
Splunk,
suspects.
Splunk, for example. So from our position as Somerford Associates, because we have a suite of solutions as well, don't want to be when we talk to our clients, we're not shoving a particular solution down people's throats because, as you say, everyone has such a different kind of environment and a different mesh of vendors and how they're solving problems and different problems. So it is good that HashiCorp can deal with this particular area, the cloud operating model, but fit in with what our clients are doing already. And a lot of our clients are using Splunk. I don't know if you've noticed that with your clients too, that you're going directly to, Dominique.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why we've
Partnered
released
with us,
this.
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
so actually, like, we're talking to a lot of people as well about the Splunk integration. So if you have an enterprise thing for HashiCorp, they do an audit trail, right? And then you can observe it and have better observability in your Splunk of
yeah.
your HashiCorp, essentially. I guess that's how to
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty much. So obviously because Vault is inherently just like, you can plug it into anything. It can like plug into your audit logging software, but especially Splunk is useful because it makes it more visible. You got a nice swanky dashboard, and you can see exactly who did what, when, where, how, why. Well, maybe not why, but why did you do that? It's like, well,
usually write a little explanation.
a
But
bit
yeah,
of
you can
a
put it into your seam and anything if you want to start tracking things, right?
yeah, but it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense for a lot of the more highly regulated customers that we have, and I'm assuming you or we have as partners. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why people like it so much.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we've talked quite a lot about that between OS and enterprise. Do you call it something that sort of move into enterprise? Have you got a name for it, or is it just
I guess conversion? No, I don't know.
conversion? No.
Oh,
Okay.
that makes it sound so salesy. Like ultimately, like even though as a solutions engineer, like one of the things that I care about the most and that I always cared about the most is helping people. And if our enterprise solutions help them get to their goal quicker, then yes, and that's obviously something that I'll talk about. But like it's
When
yeah.
will it not help people then? So what situations do you think people should just stick with the OS stuff?
I don't think that my manager likes it if I talk about that too much. No, it's sometimes it's uh yeah, I don't know. Like maybe they're not ready yet, or maybe it's too small, or maybe it's mostly like budget related or timing related, or if they don't have the right people on board to actually like make sure it gets rolled out to the entire company. But I guess that's where Summerford comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's ultimately it's not just about tools, right? It's about are the people ready to change? Is the company ready to change? Is the company ready for going into a more cloud-based operating model now? Or is it, like there's always timing is always of the essence. And I think most of it is yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
basically in that area.
That makes sense. But as you said, everything's moving really fast in HashiCorp. I have noticed in my short time working with you guys, I think maybe two products have been released recently, that waypoint and things, and just everything changes rather fast. How do you keep on top of it, and how do clients keep on top of it?
Nobody at HashiCorp knows everything about everything. I mean, maybe apart from maybe Mitch and Armand, but but it's yeah, it's a very exciting time to be here, and it's I talked a little bit about Boundary and Waypoint, but like one of the other things that's been like a main focus for us is all of our cloud solutions. So we are going to HashiCorp Cloud Platform. So we have HTTP Vault is currently in private beta. HTTP Console is in public beta, I think, in on Azure, and there's a private beta going on AWS. The GA for the console service on Azure is for I believe January 14th,
Okay, so really
2021. So that's it,
soon.
yeah, and
What
there's lots of
what's
interesting stuff.
HTTP HashiCorp platform? Is that what it means? So there's a cloud platform to
HashiCorp Cloud
access.
Platform.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so that's it's basically if you rewatch the keynote for the HashiConf Digital June,
Mhm.
which I happen to be one of the, the
Oh,
MCs
were
for.
you? So actually, I guess you could go to any of those kind of those conferences. So HashiConf Digital, or there's the blog. We love the blog. Actually, is kind of a single point of truth as well.
Yeah, this is so much resources, and I love the product marketing team, like and the developer advocacy team. Basically, everybody who's doing anything with like for practitioners in the wild are doing such a great job. Like, as you mentioned earlier, our documentation is really thorough, and we've got a learn.hashicorp.com is where it's like all very useful guided tutorials for pretty much every product. There's a discuss.hashicorp.com is where the community comes together for asking questions and everything. So it's there's so much resource out there to make sure people are successful, and then um
Help out with their issues and their troubles. So.
yeah.
So, in fact, thank you for exploring with me all of those why you would move into enterprise and what benefits you get. And if people want to find out more, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn or
Of
Twitter, which is your
course.
usual? Of course, yeah. And I guess actually, well, everyone listening is free. Feel free, obviously, to talk to Somerford as well. We've got marketing at somerfordassociates.com or your account manager. And if we don't know, we've got access into the HashiCorp people directly as well with our channel managers to help. But Dominique, sounds like you've got some quite exciting instruct tracks and
Yeah, it's
background.
one of the things that is really exciting is that we've built some lots of interesting instruct stuff as you mentioned, and we've it's nice. Like I'm actually doing regular workshops. I'm not sure when this is going to be released, but next week
Yeah.
is a vault workshop that I'm running, and yeah, so we've been keeping busy. But yeah, if you wanna contact me, obviously, like HashiCorp and Somerford are good friends. So yeah,
Yeah.
if in any way, then if you need anything from us, you can email me on Dominique@hashicorp.com or find me on Twitter. I'm at DevOpsDom.
DevOps Dom. That's
Yeah.
a great tag. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us about you're obviously so passionate about this suite of products.
Not a problem. I'm always happy to talk about it. As I said, it's always very difficult to consolidate in like a very like brief conversation, but I can talk about this stuff for hours. So if you
Yeah.
ever want to talk to me about it for hours, then hook me up.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dom.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the Somerford Podcast. I'm exploring technical topics that you are grappling with at the moment, so get in touch if you have any questions or areas you're interested in. Today, by popular request, we looked at our partnership with HashiCorp and what you could get from Enterprise. And we have a wealth of other resources on somerfordassociates.com/HashiCorp, which you can peruse and sign up to too. So thanks for listening. Goodbye.